Welcome to the channel. Share where you're watching from. We'd love to find out, so drop a comment below, and let's jump into the story. I had my doubts, but I hoped I was wrong. My wife, Rachel, and I have been married for 9 years. We live in Austin, Texas, and have 2 wonderful boys, Ethan, age 6, and Mason, age 8. I work as a senior manager at a tech company, earning a comfortable salary to support our family. Rachel, who's 36 years old, works as an accountant for a small private firm. At 38, I'm 2 years older than her, but we've always been in sync as a couple. Our life felt solid, or so I believed. We had a plan: retire early, explore the world, and enjoy the rewards of our hard work. But life, as they say, loves to throw curveballs. Rachel and I had a great routine. Every morning, we'd leave the house together, alternating between dropping the boys off at their elementary school and daycare. We exchanged texts throughout the day, sharing funny updates, random thoughts, and sometimes just a simple, "How's it going?" After work, I usually picked up the kids while Rachel got dinner started at home. Evenings were sacred family time. We'd play board games with the boys, watch a bit of TV, and tuck them into bed with a story. Afterward, Rachel and I had our time, something we always made a priority. Our physical relationship was steady, intimate 2 or 3 times during the week, and more on weekends when we had time to ourselves. It was a life I cherished, stable, predictable, and seemingly happy. About 4 months ago, Rachel mentioned a new hire at her firm named Christina. They quickly became close, likely because Christina also had 2 boys around Ethan's and Mason's ages. It didn't take long for Christina and her husband, Eric, to invite us over for a casual dinner. The kids clicked instantly, playing together like they'd been friends for years, while the adults bonded over stories and shared laughter. These dinners became a regular occurrence. We alternated hosting at our place and theirs, and before long, they were a staple in our weekends. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Christina had a way of dominating every conversation, often cutting Eric off mid-sentence. She was also a smoker, a habit Rachel had always detested, yet now seemed willing to overlook. Eric, in stark contrast, was the picture of submission. At one of our dinners, he accidentally spilled a glass of wine, and Christina berated him loudly in front of everyone. He responded with a meek apology, like a scolded schoolboy. "That's not a marriage," I thought to myself. 2 weeks ago, we were back at Christina and Eric's house for another dinner. Rachel and Christina were in the kitchen preparing snacks, while the kids were glued to the latest Marvel movie in the living room. Eric and I sat on their back patio, sipping beer under the warm Texas night. I was on my first drink, while Eric was well into his third, his speech already starting to slur. Out of nowhere, he turned to me and said, "You're a lot calmer than I thought you'd be." "Calmer about what?" I asked, unsure of where this was going. "About Rachel," he said, leaning closer as if sharing a secret. "What about Rachel?" My voice stayed calm, but my chest tightened. "You know, the late nights out with Christina. You don't think they're just chatting about work until midnight, do you?" His words hit me like a punch in the gut. "What are you talking about, Eric?" I asked, trying to mask the rising tension in my voice. He leaned back in his chair, chuckling bitterly. "Christina started doing this about a year ago, going out with friends or for work dinners. Turns out she wasn't exactly being honest." I stared at him, unsure whether to believe his drunken rambling. "What are you trying to say?" Eric shrugged, taking another sip of his beer. "Let's just say, when Christina started going out late, I noticed things. A hickey here, a new piece of jewelry there. She swore it was innocent, but eventually I caught her." He chuckled darkly. Her little friend even had a nickname. She called him her Wild Mustang. I shook my head, unsure whether to take him seriously. "Why are you still with her then?" I asked, frustration creeping into my voice. "You know how it is," he said with a bitter smile. "This is Texas, a no-fault state. If I divorce her, I'll lose the house, pay alimony, and probably barely see my kids. So I stay. What choice do I have?" Eric's words haunted me for the rest of the evening. Rachel had recently started going out on Thursday nights with Christina, claiming it was just a group of women from work having dinner. At first, I didn't think much of it. She'd come home by 9 or 10 p.m., talking about the food and funny conversations. But over the past month, her outings had stretched later and later, sometimes past midnight. The following Thursday, I decided to stay up and wait for her. Rachel walked through the door at 12:30 a.m., looking startled to see me in the living room. "Wow, Jack, you're still up?" she said with a nervous laugh. "Long night?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. "Yeah, we got caught up at the Amber Lounge," she replied, naming a new upscale cocktail bar Christina had mentioned once. "The food was amazing, and we lost track of time." She leaned in to kiss my cheek, and I caught a faint scent of cigarettes mixed with perfume. Rachel didn't smoke, but Christina did. I nodded, pretending to accept her story. "Sounds fun. Glad you had a good time." Rachel smiled and disappeared into the bathroom for a shower. As I walked past the laundry basket, something caught my eye. Her panties were hanging on the shower rail, freshly rinsed. Why would she wash them instead of tossing them into the hamper? The question gnawed at me, but I pushed it aside, trying not to jump to conclusions. The next Thursday, Rachel sent me a text. "Going out with Christina tonight. Don't wait up." I put the boys to bed, finished some work, and decided to do a little digging. Rachel had mentioned the Amber Lounge again, so I called the place under the pretense of booking a table. "Hi, I'd like to make a reservation for 2 next Thursday," I said casually. "I'm sorry," the hostess replied, "but we don't accept reservations for groups smaller than 4 on Thursdays. We're first come, first served that night." Interesting, I thought. That night, Rachel returned home just after midnight, smiling as she walked through the door. "Another great night?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "Yeah, Christina and I had the best time," she said, her voice a little too chipper. "At the Amber Lounge again?" I asked, studying her reaction. Rachel froze for a split second before recovering. "Yeah, the food there is incredible." "That's funny," I replied. "I called earlier, and they said they don't take reservations for parties of 2 on Thursdays. Their last table was seated at 8 p.m. Where were you really, Rachel?" Her face turned pale, and she avoided my gaze. "Jack, don't do this. You're being ridiculous." "Am I? Or are you hiding something from me?" She sighed heavily and walked upstairs without another word, leaving me with more questions than answers. Rachel's vague answers and late-night outings kept replaying in my mind. The woman I'd trusted with my life, my family, was becoming a stranger. The next day, I reached out to a private investigator I'd worked with before during a corporate cybersecurity issue. His name was Greg, and he had a reputation for being thorough. "Greg, I need your help," I said, explaining everything. Rachel's nights out with Christina, the inconsistencies in her stories, and the nagging doubts I couldn't shake. "I'll take care of it," Greg assured me. "Give me the details of her schedule and her usual haunts." Within a week, Greg called back with the results of his investigation. "Jack, I'm not sure how to put this, but Rachel hasn't been going to the Amber Lounge or any other restaurant," he began. "She and Christina have been frequenting a private club called the Velvet Ivy." The name didn't ring a bell. "What kind of club is it?" I asked. "It's exclusive," Greg explained. "High-end parties, wealthy clientele, and let's just say, not the kind of place you'd expect a married mother of 2 to spend her nights." Greg sent over photos. In one, Rachel and Christina were laughing as they entered the club, dressed in cocktail dresses that were far more revealing than anything Rachel usually wore. In another, they were seated in a dimly lit lounge with 2 men who looked like they belonged on a magazine cover. My stomach churned. That Saturday, Rachel casually mentioned that Christina had invited her to an exclusive networking event at a new venue. "I'll be back late," she said, avoiding eye contact. "Sure," I replied, masking my frustration. "Have fun." But this time, I wasn't staying home. I waited until Rachel left, then logged into the tracker Greg had installed on her phone. As expected, she headed straight to the Velvet Ivy. Determined to uncover the truth, I drove to the club, parking down the street where I could watch the entrance without being seen. Rachel arrived in a sleek black car, stepping out in a red dress that hugged her figure. Christina was with her, along with 2 well-dressed men who were clearly not their husbands. The group entered the club, laughing and chatting like old friends. I stayed in my car, debating my next move. But then, Greg called with an update. "Jack," I dug a little deeper. "The Velvet Ivy has a reputation for hosting private events at nearby locations. Think mansions, luxury yachts, that sort of thing." As if on cue, Rachel and her group re-emerged from the club, piling into a black SUV. I followed at a safe distance, my heart pounding. The SUV drove to a massive estate on the outskirts of Austin. The driveway was lined with luxury cars, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Bentleys. This wasn't just a party. It was a scene out of a movie. I parked down the street, stepping into the shadows to get a better look. Rachel and her group disappeared inside, leaving me standing there, torn between storming in and waiting to see what unfolded. Nearly 2 hours passed. I was about to leave when the front doors opened. Rachel stepped out, her arm linked with one of the men from earlier. They were laughing, their faces flushed. He leaned down and kissed her cheek. Then her lips. Rachel didn't pull away. She kissed him back, wrapping her arms around his neck. My blood ran cold. All the doubts, all the questions, they were answered in that single moment. The man led Rachel to the SUV, his hand resting on her lower back. They drove off, heading toward downtown Austin. Fueled by adrenaline and heartbreak, I followed them to the Golden Horizon Hotel, one of the city's most luxurious establishments. Rachel and the man entered through a private side entrance. I parked and headed to the front desk. "Excuse me," I said to the concierge. "I'm here to surprise my wife, but I forgot her room number. Can you help me out?" The woman hesitated, but eventually checked the system. "Room 804, she said with a polite smile. I thanked her and stepped into the elevator, my heart pounding with every floor. When I reached room 804, I heard muffled voices and laughter through the door. Steeling myself, I knocked. The laughter stopped, and the door opened slightly. Rachel's face appeared, her eyes widening in shock. "Jack," she stammered. I pushed the door open, stepping inside. Rachel was still in her red dress, but it was rumpled. The man sat on the edge of the bed, his tie loosened and his shirt unbuttoned. "So, this is your networking event, Rachel?" I said, my voice trembling with anger. "Jack, I can explain." "Don't," I snapped, cutting her off. "I've heard enough lies." The man stood, his towering frame attempting to intimidate me. "Hey man, you got the wrong idea." "No," I said, my voice firm. "I know exactly what's going on." Rachel crossed her arms, her defiance returning. "You shouldn't have followed me, Jack. This is none of your business." "None of my business? You're my wife. This is my family you're throwing away." The man tried to step closer, but I pointed a finger at him. "Stay out of this." Turning back to Rachel, I said, "I hope it was worth it because we're done." I walked out, leaving her stunned and speechless. The drive home was a blur. My emotions swung between heartbreak and fury. When I got home, the house was quiet. Ethan and Mason were fast asleep, blissfully unaware of the chaos their parents were spiraling into. I sat in the living room, staring at the clock, waiting for the hours to pass. Around 8 a.m., Rachel finally came home. She was still wearing the red dress, her makeup smudged, and her hair disheveled. She walked into the kitchen, where I was making pancakes for the boys, and froze. "Jack, we need to talk," she said, her voice soft but resolute. "Not in front of the kids," I replied coldly. The boys ran in moments later, excited to see their mom. She hugged them, her guilt masked by a strained smile. Once they were settled in the living room with their breakfast, Rachel and I sat down at the dining table. The tension was palpable, and I could feel the weight of the confrontation pressing down on both of us. "Jack, I'm sorry for what you saw," she began, her eyes avoiding mine. "It wasn't supposed to happen this way." "This way?" I repeated, my voice rising. "So there was a plan for this? For sneaking around? For lying to me? For betraying everything we've built?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but I wasn't moved. "I didn't mean for things to get so out of hand," she whispered. "Out of hand?" I snapped. "Rachel, this wasn't a mistake. It was a choice, a series of choices. You didn't just trip and fall into another man's arms. You deliberately went behind my back, over and over again." She tried to speak, but I held up my hand to stop her. "You think you can justify this? Do you have any idea what you've done to our family?" Her tears fell freely now. "Jack, I know I messed up, but think about the boys. Don't let this ruin them." "I am thinking about them," I said, my voice steady but cold. That's the only reason I haven't thrown you out of this house yet. After Rachel left the room, I sat in my home office, sorting through the evidence Greg had provided. The photos, the timeline, the recordings, it was all there, laid out like a case file. I called my lawyer and shared everything with him. He assured me that while Texas was a no-fault divorce state, the evidence could still be used to negotiate a more favorable settlement. But I wasn't just thinking about the legalities. Rachel had betrayed me in the worst possible way, and I couldn't let her walk away without consequences. That's when I had an idea. I reached out to a friend named Adam, a cybersecurity expert I'd worked with on a past project. Adam, I need your help, I said, explaining the situation. What do you have in mind? He asked. I told him about my plan to create a digital trail that would expose Rachel's duplicity in a way she couldn't deny. We set up a fake dating profile for her on an exclusive app used by wealthy individuals. Using the photos Greg had taken, we made it look as though Rachel had been actively seeking out adventures for months. It didn't take long for the profile to attract attention. Within days, Rachel received an invitation to a private networking event at a luxury resort in Miami. I played the part of the supportive husband, encouraging her to go. You deserve some time to yourself, I said with a forced smile. It might help clear your head. Rachel hesitated but eventually agreed, thinking I was softening after the confrontation. Little did she know, the entire event was a setup. The event in Miami was hosted by a business associate of Adam's, who owed him a favor. Everything Rachel did at the event was carefully documented. Every flirtatious conversation, every drink shared with a stranger, every compromising moment. When Rachel returned home, she seemed lighter, as if the trip had been a release for her. But the moment she walked through the door, I confronted her with the evidence. Jack, what's this? She asked, her voice trembling as she looked through the photos and transcripts I'd laid out on the dining table. This is who you've become, I said coldly. This is the life you chose over your family. Her face turned pale as she scanned the evidence. Jack, I didn't mean... Stop, I interrupted. I don't want to hear your excuses. It's too late for that. She fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. Please, Jack, I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. I'll change. Just don't take the boys from me. I stared at her, feeling no sympathy. You didn't just betray me, Rachel. You betrayed them, and they deserve better than this. The next day, I filed for divorce. With the evidence Greg and Adam had gathered, I was able to secure full custody of Ethan and Mason, keep the house, and reduce alimony payments to a minimum. Rachel moved into a small apartment across town, her life a shadow of what it had been. She tried to stay involved in the boys' lives, but her visits grew infrequent as time passed. Meanwhile, I focused on rebuilding. I poured my energy into my work, my boys, and creating a stable, loving environment for them. One evening, as I watched Ethan and Mason play in the backyard, I felt a sense of peace. The chaos was behind me, and I was finally ready to move forward. Rachel's betrayal had left scars, but it had also taught me a valuable lesson. Sometimes, letting go is the only way to truly heal.